Welcome back to another episode of Coffee Wednesday, and today let's do something a little bit different, or it's not exactly that different. This is how we've been doing things for, the beginning parts, or should I say back in the days, where I tend to like to record a video that's one continuous take, because that allows me to express ideas in a more, less distracted sort of way. All these jump cuts, and for the past few weeks, I just sort of noticed myself getting really frustrated at the jump cuts because I just feel like the idea is not continuous, and I rather make this experience kind of like a very continuous experience, and I want to present my ideas and give myself the kind of space to really elaborate on these ideas and to challenge myself to present ideas in a very succinct kind of way so I can actually finish everything in one take instead of needing this backup of editing. So here I am stepping away from any kinds of editing, and today's episode is going to be about this idea of like why bookish people or intellectually driven people or people that are, drawn to pursuits like philosophy, literature, or history, or these very solitary pursuits where it basically requires you to spend a lot of time by yourself to think. Why is it healthy for us to actually engage with the world directly? Why is it actually healthy for us to think about some of these ideas externally instead of just subscribing to this idea that intellectual pursuits are supposed to be solitary, supposed to be something, supposed to be like this mode of life akin to the life of a lonely genius or someone that's like entirely absorbed in this world of philosophical ideas? Why is it healthy for us to actually engage with the world and to construct better ideas and better theories and to think about our lives in a better way? So the story started, for me at least, with this accidental encounter with the works of Bertrand Russell. And I've read Bertrand Russell before, but it was kind of like the haphazard sort of piecing together different information from different books. So I didn't exactly know what he was all about. But then this semester, I'm actually taking a unit in analytical philosophy called the philosophy of language. So we read everyone from Kripke to Wittgenstein to to Strawson, and of course Bertrand Russell being one of the people that really try to push forward this entire idea of logicism and this entire idea of formal analytical philosophy. So I ran into the works of Bertrand Russell, and then I found myself at his bookstore after my classes, because I'm the kind of person who loves to expand. I love to read beyond a syllabus, so hence I was walking through a bookstore. I was, picking out bits and pieces of everything, trying to find something interesting to read. And I found this book by Bertrand Russell by the name of The Conquest of Happiness. And this is simply, I read the back of it, and it's described as, the precursor to a self-help book. And it basically talked about the blurb basically framed this book as kind of like a very practical kind of philosophy. And the entire subject of this book is basically how do we acquire happiness in a modern world. And some of the insights in this book are simply amazing. And I finished this book very recently. And here is a quote that I want to share with you guys to open up this discussion of like how to treat ourselves better or how to not go insane during this journey of pursuing ideas, of pursuing things that are inherently fruitful intellectually, that are intellectually engaging, that are very, very beneficial for us. So here's the quote. So I quote from Bertrand Russell: "The mind is a strange machine which can combine the materials offered to it in the most astonishing ways, but without materials from the external world, it is powerless. And unlike the sausage machine, it must seize its material for itself, since events only become experiences through the interest that we take in them. If they do not interest us, we are making nothing of them. The man, therefore, whose attention is turned within finds nothing worthy of his notice, whereas a man whose attention is turned outwards can find within those rare moments when he examines his soul, the most varied and interesting assortment of ingredients being dissected and combined into beautiful or instructive patterns." So immediately, the interesting thing that really jumped out to me is this idea of the dangers of too much self-reflection, or the dangers of too much contemplation, so to speak. And of course, I'm not saying that if you're intellectually inclined that you shouldn't contemplate by yourself, or you shouldn't spend a bulk of your time thinking about ideas that you've read, or thinking about books that you've read, or if you're a poet, or if you're more artistically inclined, that you shouldn't spend time examining your artistic inspirations and your artistic abilities and so forth. But I think this idea reaches beyond this idea of self-reflection. It ventures into this point where we have to start talking about the role of life experience in the act of creation, in the act of producing something better for the world, or in the act of simply being content and happy. So for me personally, I've always held this wrong idea of somehow to be completely focused on my work, I gotta work very exclusively in solitude. That I have to reach something deeper that's beyond life, reach into something really profound, that's away from reality. So you get this effect of this. Bertrand Russell called it the sort of Bironic unhappiness. This sort of you don't find anything interesting in the world, where your sole occupation is your creativity, your creative pursuits, or your intellectual pursuits, or something that you're trying to achieve. So there's this real paradox happening here, is that on one hand, to be the kind of person who's competent in contemplation, you in a sense have to turn your attention outward sometimes. You in a sense have to push yourself out of your bubble of solitude, or you to really engage with these ideas, to really understand a piece of idea from a piece of philosophy. You in a sense have to turn your attention towards the outer world. Or towards this world of visions and this world of things that you're experiencing out there. So that doesn't look like sitting in your room reading a lot of philosophy books, trying to piece together some profound understanding of the world. Certainly doesn't look like laboring at a typewriter with a bottle of whiskey next to your typewriter. Certainly doesn't look like that. But instead it looks like engaging with mundane things, like getting into trouble at university, or things like getting a coffee order wrong, or things like missing a bus or missing a train, or getting into social situations where you could have embarrassed yourself, or getting into situations where you could be humiliated, or getting into situations where you don't exactly feel that competent in that specific social situation. And that process of exposing yourself to the real world, or that process of really letting your reins loose, that process of letting go of this scholar's sort of timidness, that's something that really excites me. And Bertrand Russell basically talked about how the process of really reaching into something deeper, the process of really reaching something that's instructive and productive, is this process of generally developing the thick skin for you to really face reality. And then as a consequence, you can then relate to these philosophical ideas in a deeper way, in a way that's so much more profound than if you just lock yourself in a room where you're trapped into this echo chamber of ideas and creative expressions and whatnot. So that's the sort of view that I'm trying to take right now. And the interesting thing that I had a conversation with my friend Hano recently, which is he's writing a lot of movie scripts, and he wants to be a director, and he wants to work in that field. And he basically was talking about how he took a break from writing movie scripts completely for 7 days. And then I found that idea to be very interesting. And he basically said to me, in these 7 days at first, it felt wrong to not write. It feels wrong to not engage in an act of creativity. It feels very wrong to do a lot of external stuff, So Bertrand Russell had this analogy of there are two sausage making machines. One of these machines is very much engaged in the process of making sausages. And another machine was very keen to study its insides. And Bertrand Russell basically argued that the machine that studies too much of its insides loses its function and succumbs to misery. But then the machine that is focused on creating sausages, focused on creating these turning experience into something that's instructive, or something that's digestible, that's actually a better way of living life. So engaging with the world is a better way of engaging with your intellectual work, your artistic work, compared to if you do excessive amounts of self-reflection. So this friend of mine, Hano, if you can, I'll link his YouTube channel in the description down below, and also his TikToks and his Instagram account in the description down below. He took a break entirely from writing for 7 days. And for me, that's just a process of him allowing himself to really push himself beyond just his creative work, to re-engage with life again, so he could acquire that zest for life again, So he could acquire the pleasures of walking through an art gallery alone. He went to a film art gallery, and that he could basically open himself up to, sources of inspiration. He could open himself up to situations where he has to hang out with his girlfriend, or things like he's in a sense going through all of these things that he would have not encountered had he decided to stay in his room in front of the typewriter to write all day long. And he basically concluded after his 7 days break that he basically found himself running towards the typewriter at the end of the 7 days break period. And he found himself, in a sense, urging, having the urge to rush back into his creative pursuits, which to me is absolutely fantastic. And for me, the final point here that I'm trying to bring to you guys for bookish people, creative people, intellectual people, the reason why it's important to, should I say, find a way to re-engage with the world, to step away from your work, creative work once in a while, to step away from books once in a while into the real world again, is that it creates a crucial separation between work and life. And it creates this crucial separation between your, should I say, intellectual pursuits and the pursuits that you're supposed to engage with, in the real world. Because the real world is full of messy events, full of contradictions, full of stuff that you'd rather not deal with, and full of really complicated situations, social situations. Then if you just rest in the security of tackling with complex ideas or complex creative art forms all the time, you in a sense are developing a fear, this agoraphobia of the external world. But this mindset of allowing yourself to engage with the world again once in a while before you return to a creative work like Hano did, this creates a crucial separation between your creative work, intellectual work, or your artistic work and reality. Because life precedes artistic expressions. Artistic expressions or literature, they're supposed to inform this experience that you're going to have in the real world. But without this experience, first, you can't really attribute that profound of an understanding upon literature or this art form. Or you have to, first of all, go through certain things. And when you're reading a piece of literature, it's, in a sense, the most satisfying periods are periods of first identification. And second, the book is going to take your identification with that experience as a basis. And then the book somehow changes an idea in your head. It changes some perception that you have about reality. And that process itself requires a dipping in and out, into reality, back into a world of ideas, into reality, back into a world of ideas. And it makes life a lot more enjoyable. So you can actually open yourself up to the ordinary pleasures of life, the pleasures of life that you would have disregarded had you subscribed to this idea of I need to be a solipsistic person working on his craft all the time, working on his intellectual work, or working on his art all the time. So it creates a balance. And I feel like society right now lacks balance and moderation. It's always, the workaholic or the hedonist. There's that really there's a severe lack of moderation, which is a classical virtue. So the severe lack of moderation is driving a lot of workaholics into despair, driving a lot of hedonists into despair. So what I'm trying to figure out in my own life personally is to create a harmony, should I say, a harmony between my work on YouTube here, presenting ideas to you guys, and how I would live my life, the ordinary stuff that I have to do to keep this life going. So that harmony for me is a continuous process of experimenting with extremes. And I certainly felt like I've experienced, this extreme of workaholism when I was first trying to get this YouTube channel started, and I've certainly experienced that extreme of hedonism where I wasn't doing any kind of meaningful work for a little while. So then after a little while, it creates this balance. You can really turn yourself into that sausage making machine that's able to, in a sense, take the raw ingredients of life and turn it into something instructive, purposeful, artistic, with real substance. Because if you don't live for a little while, if you don't gain that life's experience, it's very difficult, very difficult for you to, in a sense, derive something that has meat, something that has a substance. And I feel like this book right here really illustrated that fact to me. This book perfectly phrased what I was thinking for the longest time into words, And I hope that you can summon up the curiosity to read this book yourself. It's a very short book. It's under 200 pages. And if you can read it, get back to me on it and tell me what you think of this subject. So what do you think of this idea of work-life balance? What do you think of this idea of that we need to pursue this constant dipping in and out of reality, or into the world of work and back to reality, into the world of work and back into reality, into the world of literature, back to reality? So what do you think of this idea? And that concludes this week's episode of Coffee Wednesday. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Expect more of these, should I say, unscripted rambles, or these unedited pieces of video, because I really feel like these ideas are much better in this kind of like uninterrupted sequence. And I feel like I'm more able to connect these ideas in a very cohesive way if I'm just kind of like, if it's in one take. So have a great rest of your week, and RC Waldun here, and I will see you in the next one.